What is the school doing to reduce single-use plastics like plastic bottles and plastic cups that they sell in the ref?
We've already put a lot of that into place even before it was being talked about with COP26. So actually what we have with the cups that we use, everything is actually biodegradable. But one of the things that we definitely need to move on is actually the use of single-use plastic bottles for water. And one of the ideas, many of the ideas have come from students. And one of the ideas that's come from students is actually to produce a sort of water bottle that can then actually be filled from dispensers. So you're actually not even using mineral water, you're actually using tap water, filtered tap water into dispensers designed by students. So it can be used as a fundraiser, but also then it's the individual's responsibility to use something that actually effective they can use every day, and really to eradicate the use of plastic bottles, full stop. COVID does make certain things difficult like that, but once we're moving out of COVID, we should be able to achieve that within pretty short space of time.
Does the school have solar panels, and if not, can we get some?
It doesn't have solar panels. Solar panels would be prohibitively expensive. One of the interesting things I think for when we're thinking about adaptations that are environmentally friendly is why there isn't money to support organisations that actually want to move in that direction. However, I can share something with you that is going to make a difference, and that is that we are replacing all the lighting in all the buildings. We've started, we're about halfway through the main building. That is going to dramatically reduce our energy consumption, and it is also actually going to save money as well. So it has a very significant benefit, and that is being supported by a scheme that means we don't have to put all the money up front.
Are the school vehicles eco-friendly? If not, how will you encourage sustainable travel and reduce your carbon footprint?
The biggest thing we're going to do is that from the very latest, from August 2022, we are introducing a series of bus services to bring young people to school. The biggest issue is not the school vehicles, but actually parents understandably dropping their children off, but often using one or two people using a vehicle. We can increase the number of bus services, which we're going to do. We're introducing 5 different new bus services. That immediately reduces the pull on the environment, and of course actually keeps young people safe, and will probably actually help parents as well, particularly when people are actually working from home and trying to avoid unnecessary journeys. As far as the school vehicles are concerned, clearly as we replace the 4 or 5 minibuses we've got, we'll be looking to replace them with vehicles that are more eco-friendly.
Has the school got any plans to reduce food waste?
Already has. The biggest change and the biggest reduction in food waste came about through the use of the app and the use of, therefore basically people ordering what they need, consuming it, as opposed to actually producing food and hoping it sells in the refectory. And that has actually slashed food waste to, I want to say nil. I think nil would be a bit optimistic, but very minimal levels indeed. And again, it's all about shepherding your resources effectively as well. So actually, what we produce, we sell, and there is very little waste indeed. Whereas previously, we would be producing meals, and if it didn't sell, for hygiene reasons, you had to dispose of it. Now we have virtually no uplift of food waste, and going forward, however we develop the ref and other catering facilities, that's one of our primary objectives.
Do you believe the school has worked to the best of its ability?
I think it's taken time for us to get there. I think now we are working very hard to become as eco-friendly as we possibly can. A lot of that is down, I have to say, to the work of a small number of people, not least students like yourselves, Mr McLean, other committed colleagues who have pushed, and actually I think what it shows us is the benefit of not going away and not taking no for an answer and actually coming up with intelligent solutions. I think what students and staff have enabled us as leaders to do is to keep reflecting on how we can improve our practice. Are we there yet? No, I don't think any organisation is. And I think the moment you think you've got there is the moment you should continue looking or be looking for new areas to develop. We've seen the fact that we've opened up and tried to become a greener campus to engage more with our neighbours. I mentioned the savings with lights. I mentioned the thinking about the sort of having biodegradable serving vessels. I've talked about thinking about what we can do in terms of travel, but there will be other things that we still can do. One of the issues we have, and we have to keep thinking through, is we have a very large site. We have a series of buildings, some of which are very eco-friendly, the sports hall being a prime example, but other older buildings that actually are far from eco-friendly, and we need to be continually reflecting on what can we do, and not putting barriers in the way, so not saying, oh, that's too expensive, but trying to find more imaginative ways of dealing with things, or approaching things via different angles. We started talking about replacing lights probably 2 or 3 years ago, and there've been a lot of fits and starts about achieving that, and I'm glad that now we're able to do it. There are, I could be really boring about this, Jonathan, and say there's about 1,000 light fittings in this building alone. 450 of them have now been replaced, so that's 550 more to go. But actually, once we've done it, that will future-proof us for the next 20 years, and it will make it possible to make other savings. And I think we can continue to look in that way, and maybe solar power will come along because actually somebody comes up with a scheme which we want to embrace. There is a practical benefit just as there is an environmental benefit. So actually nobody loses on this one. There's no reason we wouldn't want to do it. I think that actually it is not acceptable for any of us to say, oh, that doesn't matter any longer.
How can students and you personally make a difference?
I think students are actually doing relatively well. I think things that students have done well in is actually, as I said, pushing me and pushing other staff and leadership to continue to look at how we can reduce our carbon footprint. I think all of us could actually say, do we need to make those journeys? Do we need to make those journeys in that particular way? I think we need to look at, as you mentioned, food waste, actually saying, are we running the school in the most efficient way we can? Sometimes it takes effort to put these things into place, and I think students have been very good at pushing us. Students generally have been very good themselves. The one thing that I think we could all, probably most of us, do better was actually with those plastic bottles that you actually mentioned. Particularly, I suspect, students, because they probably carry around water in a way that I don't, and actually there's a big, and it's all too easy to buy lots of bottles of water and throw the plastic away, isn't it? So perhaps that's one we could continue to work at. And it is the little things, it's the incremental change. It is turning the lights off. It is saying, do we need the room to be quite as overheated as it actually is? It's about continuing to push for change.
What are you doing to ensure that children are recycling throughout the day, like playtime and lunch?
I mean, we have invested in a lot of bins where now it is more obvious as to which thing, but actually we've also removed bins in some areas because there's conflicting evidence that says that if you put a lot of bins, people create waste. Now, over 30 years ago I went to Switzerland and discovered that you will struggle to find a bin in a public place in Switzerland. Why is that? Because what they're saying to people is actually you shouldn't be creating waste. If you do create any waste, it should go home with you. So there's that balance between wanting the place to look neat, clean and ordered, but also actually in basically educating people in subtle ways that actually reducing waste, not creating waste, is more important. So we've provided the opportunities. We've thought about in classrooms now. We only have a box, and what's interesting is nobody protests about that. Our cleaners initially were a bit sceptical, thought it would make maybe the job a hard job harder. They now actually realise that actually waste has reduced, and they're leading the way as well.
How are you going to ensure that St Aloysius will continue to tackle climate change and be eco-friendly even after COP26?
I think that's the big question. Is that you can have COP26 can be the greatest success in the world, but actually the success of it will be defined by its legacy. What do we do after it? And I think that's where the work of the eco group, the work of colleagues, the work of leadership, the work of students, as I say, constantly challenging and actually having it, just as we would have health and safety, just as we would have safeguarding as an agenda item on all of our meetings, we need also to actually have the environment. And we need to remember that this is an imperative for all of humanity. But as a Catholic school, as a Jesuit school, and as a Laudate Si school, that's pretty central to what we do. It's actually part of our commitment as a faith community to showing what we should be doing. So I think it's about all of us constantly reminding, all of us making a bit of a pain of ourselves at times and saying it's really important. Now we've got a voice. We're a voice of about 1,000 people, so it's not an insignificant voice, and we can make differences. We can work with parents to suggest different ways of travelling in. We control our catering, we control our cleaning, we control our buildings. So actually, as an independent school, there's a lot more opportunities for us to control our own destiny. And I think that's what we've got to do. I think we've got to not say that we've done it that way in the past, and therefore we're going to continue doing it like that. We've got to actually say, why are we doing it like that? How can we do it better?